The world's most honored watch is Longines. Longines watches have won 10 World's Fair grand prizes, 28 gold medals, and more honors for accuracy than any other timepiece. Longines, the world's most honored watch, is made and guaranteed by the Longines Whitnall Watch Company.
It's time for the Longines Chronoscope, a television journal of the important issues of the hour, brought to you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. A presentation of the Longines Whitnall Watch Company, maker of Longines, the world's most honored watch, and Whitnall, distinguished companion to the world-honored Longines.
Good evening. This is Frank Knight. May I introduce our co-editors for this edition of the Longines Chronoscope? Mr. William White, war correspondent and editor of the Emporia Gazette, and Mr. William Bradford Huey, editor of the American Mercury. Our distinguished guest for this evening is Dr. H.C. Byrd, president of Maryland University. The opinions expressed are necessarily those of the speakers.
Dr. Byrd, you, of course, are president of the University of Maryland, the school that's to play in the Sugar Bowl. And our audience knows something about what seemed to be a row between you and the Southern Conference. Now, did you accept an invitation to play despite a ruling from the Southern Conference, sir?
We did not. We accepted an invitation within the rules and regulations of the Southern Conference, and we're perfectly valid in what we did.
And has the Southern Conference has taken some action against you as a result of that, haven't
That
they?
is right. The Southern Conference has put us on probation so far as football is concerned for 1 year.
Well, what kind of a doghouse is this, Doctor? How long are they going to keep you there, and what do they do to you?
Well, it's a doghouse that's going to earn us about $180,000 for the year time we're in the doghouse. So I
Is
think
there that much sugar in that sugar bowl?
just about it.
Well, that $180,000, how will you earn that, sir?
Well, we'll make $100,000 of the Sugar Bowl, and we'll make a good deal more money on the football games that we'll play with other schools than we would with the schools that have been necessarily forced off our schedule by virtue of the action of the conference.
Now, just once again, sir, how much is the Sugar Bowl worth to the University of Maryland? How much will you make out of the Sugar Bowl?
About $125,000.
And you're, as a college president, you're not opposed to making that money, I assume.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm Jesuit enough to believe that it's the purposes to which money is put rather than the sources from which it comes.
Right. You have no objection to the University of Maryland football team playing before large crowds and taking in money.
Well, provided the money is properly used.
But the point is, you don't object to making it if it is properly used.
Well, I can't find many people who do object, Mr. Hewitt.
Now, is football, we've heard a lot about overemphasis of football, sir. Is football overemphasized at your school?
No, it is not. Football is kept within its proper sphere and does not interfere in the slightest degree with any of the academic work, and actually, I think it's true in most cases in most schools. It occupies a minor place, actually, in university life.
Well, now, in general, sir, what is your opinion? Do you think, you don't think, then, that generally football has been emphasized too much?
Generally, no. Specifically, in some cases, yes.
Doctor, is there much competition for players down there? Is there any in the Southern Conference generally? They go
Well,
after
I think, Mr. White, you shouldn't say down there. You should say up here and down
That's
there,
right.
and I will agree with you, sir. Yes.
You mean
there
there's a
is.
great deal of competition all over the country?
That is
for
correct,
football.
yes.
And Maryland is in there pitching, I assume.
That is right.
And you think that's quite proper for schools to compete for the services of college athletes?
Well, my own thinking is that all schools go a little bit too far in that direction.
But you haven't told the people at Maryland to slow down or to compete any less vigorously, have you, sir?
Yes, we work in that score within reps, as they may say on the racetrack, much more so than some other institutions do. There are things that we do not do and points beyond which we do not go.
Now, at Maryland, you're the president, sir. Now, do you make the policy? Do you manage sports at Maryland, or do you leave that to your coaching staff?
Oh, that's left to an athletic board, which is composed entirely of members of the faculty and those who are professionally employed for that purpose.
You don't, the alumni don't come in for just a little bit of say on
We
athletics
do not let
there?
the alumni have anything to do with the management of athletics.
Oh dear, oh dear.
Well, now, what about the, our audience has heard a
I
great
might add
deal.
to that, too, that that's one of the evils of athletics in some places. There's too much influence, pernicious influence on the part of alumni.
And at Maryland, you feel that you have that influence under control.
We not only have it under control, we've eliminated it.
Now, our audience has heard a great deal and has perhaps been concerned with the news about the West Point fix. And around the country, we've heard that that's an indication of the overemphasis of football. Now, specifically, do you think that the West Point scandals were the result of overemphasis of football?
No, I'm inclined to think, and possibly I shouldn't say this, it certainly isn't diplomatic to say it. The situation at West Point might have developed with any group of students, because they just should not have given the same type of examinations year after year and asked the same questions year after year.
You'd be inclined to excuse the boys partially and to place the blame elsewhere for the result.
You can't excuse dishonesty under any circumstances, but you can develop circumstances of such a nature as to prevent opportunities for dishonesty.
Do you think that there is a general deterioration among students? Do you think that the West Point scandals, the basketball fixes, indicate that there is a deterioration of standards of honor among students?
No, sir, I do not. I think the average college student today is a better man, and the average college girl today is a better woman than they were 20 years ago, and I think they're getting better and better all the time. The average college student is a pretty high-class youngster.
By the way, Doctor, on this recent ruling of the Federal Communications Commission enforcing the free televising of games, what do you think about that? Are the conferences right, or the FCC? What?
Well, my viewpoint about that's a little bit different from the athletic people. They feel that television is cutting in greatly on receipts. My judgment is that television cuts in on some particular games, but in the long pull it will do more in the way of advertising and do more for athletics, or as much for athletics as any other one factor.
So you're not, you are opposed to the present ruling by the National College body, are you, sir?
I think there should be no restrictions unless they be of a minor nature and connection with some particular game.
And specifically, you'd have no objection to all of the games played by your school being televised.
We would like to have them televised. In the first place, it makes the athletic board some money, and money can be used very advantageous.
You think that in televising, there is more money to be made in televising than in restricting televising?
I do, in the long run, yes, over the long pull. While specifically for some games and in some particular season you might lose some money, the resultant advertising and the building up of interest among people over the years will be very, very valuable, because it's proved in radio. They didn't want radio games broadcast at the start, but after a while they began to see that radio actually was building better crowds.
Eventually, you think that there will be freedom of televising. You think that all schools will allow
I think
that?
the public will demand it. And what the public demands, the public's going to have.
Now, sir, I'd like to come back just one second to a point that you made before. You believe that it's perfectly proper for a college president to plan to make as much money as possible with his football team.
Well, I doubt if any college president makes plans of that kind. Certainly we don't, and I don't. I do think that it's a good thing if a football team can make money in a season, because that money helps to carry on a larger program, bringing in more students, helps out the physical education program, and affects the student body advantageously.
Do you recognize any ill effects of the present college football system?
There are some ill effects, yes.
To the men themselves, would you say?
Who are playing, you mean?
To the players.
No, there's no ill effects to the players.
Do they have time to carry on their studies?
In some schools they may not. Where a school overemphasizes the importance of football, they wouldn't have time to do it, but certainly in most institutions, type of institutions of which I'm thinking, state universities, schools like Yale, Cornell, they couldn't afford to let football interfere with their scholastic or academic work.
By the way, Doctor, this matter of academic scholarships, what are the athletic scholarships? What are the rules of the ring on that in the Southern Conference?
Well, frankly, they're a little bit more liberal than they should be. But the Southern Conference and the Southern institutions believe in absolute open honesty about it, and they do not believe in hiding the hypocrisy of a situation behind an assumed veil of ignorance. And that's done in some institutions because they say they have no athletic scholarships, but the athletes get scholarships.
Well, Dr. Byrd, and as I understand your message to our audience tonight, you do not see any dangers of overemphasis at the moment. You are glad that the University of Maryland is playing in the Sugar Bowl, and you are very, very glad to get the $125,000 from it. And you think that the responsibility is on college presidents to manage athletics properly. Thank you very much for being with us, sir.
The editorial board for this edition of the Longines Chronoscope was Mr. William White and Mr. William Bradford Huey. Our distinguished guest was Dr. H.C. Byrd, president of Maryland University.
Presentation of the Longines Whitnall Watch Company, maker of Longines, the world's most honored watch, and Whitnall, distinguished companion to the world-honored Longines.
Good evening. This is Frank Knight. May I introduce our co-editors for this edition of the Longines Chronoscope? Mr.
The world's most honored watch is Longines. Longines watches have won 10 World's Fair grand prizes, 28 gold medals, and more honors for accuracy than...
Of course, the president of the University of Maryland, the school that's to play in the Sugar Bowl. And our audience knows something about what seemed to be a row between you and the Southern Conference. Now, did you accept an invitation to play despite a ruling from the Southern Conference, sir?
We did not. We accepted an invitation within the rules.
Any other timepiece. Longines, the world's most honored watch, is made and guaranteed by the Longines Whitnall Watch Company.
It's time for the Longines Chronoscope, a television journal of the important issues of the hour, brought to you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
William White, war correspondent and editor of the Emporia Gazette, and Mr. William Bradford Huey, editor of the American Mercury. Our distinguished guest for this evening is Dr. H.C. Byrd, president of Maryland University. The opinions expressed are necessarily those of the speakers.
Dr. Byrd, you, of course...